Hey Megamaniacs, this is Mr. MegaManFan, and this week's episode is called Goodwill Hunting. That's because it's the retro hunting adventures, and almost everything you see in this bin I picked up at Goodwill. Now there's a few things that I tested already before this video started, including the two PS3 games and this DualShock 6-axis controller. It was the only first-party Sony PS3 controller I found in any of the bins, and given that it was marked $3.99, I figured if it worked, it was a steal, and if not, then it wasn't that much out of my pocket. Turns out it was an even better deal than I thought because it routinely goes for $20 to $30. That particular camouflage version can be on the low end or the high end depending on eBay or price charting, but it turned out to be a heck of a deal. And this is a turbo controller, Mad Catz 3-button Genesis controller, which was even cheaper, only $2.99. So once again, I thought, if it works, that's a bargain for a working Genesis controller. If it's not that much to spend. Got a GameCube controller here called the Super Pad. I'd never heard of this one before and didn't have a Super Pad in my GameCube controller collection. So the novelty of it looked like it would be worth playing. Plus, it didn't look too beat up. You know, you got to be a little picky when you pull stuff out of Goodwill bins. I mean, a few stains, that's okay, but if the buttons look totally destroyed, maybe take a pass on it because it's probably not going to work at that point. And then sometimes you find something that you know you should buy even though you don't know why. At first, I was confused by the pause and play buttons on what appeared to be a 6-button Genesis controller, but then I saw Super UFO on the back when I got home, and I realized this is a 3DO controller. And I have a Panasonic 3DO, and I can test it on that. And the weird thing about this one is it has a battery cover on the back, but there's no place to put batteries. I mean, you could put batteries in there, but there are no contacts to interact with a battery. You can see that there were none assembled in it. And from the research I've done online, they must have just recycled a controller shell when they manufactured this one, so they left all the plastic molding intact, even though this doesn't actually need batteries. Kind of lazy, but also kind of rare, because I couldn't find the Super UFO on eBay, and only one website even talked about it, and yet I got it in a Goodwill bin for $3. Some days Goodwill hunting is better than others. Now you'll have to forgive me if the 3DO is a little dusty, because honestly I haven't used this thing in at least 4 days, and if it wasn't for this new controller I probably wouldn't have had any good reason to, but I did leave a game in here so I didn't have to fish one out to test it with. We can just get right into it by switching my Switchbox to 3DO on the back of the TV and then sitting down for a game of balls, as my friend Sir Crunch would say at this opportune moment. And now we close the lid and start the software up, and we'll see if it loads properly and my 3DO still works the way it's supposed to. Yes, I know, insert CD. So the lid is closed, the game is on, and yes, the controller seems to be functioning the way it's supposed to. I'm hitting up and I'm hitting down, and it's moving up and down on the 1-player, 2-player options. That is one of the downsides of what they call the fighting pad, the Super UFO 3DO pad, is 3DO controllers were meant to be daisy chained together if you wanted to have more than one player, and there's no place to daisy chain this controller. They left that option out, so you want to hook more than one up, you need to use the real thing or a third-party one that comes with the port at the bottom. This one does not, so it's strictly for solo play. But because it has 6 buttons in a layout that you can use them for fighting games, it's still preferred by some people, and I've seen reports that it can fetch pretty good amounts. I'm not getting rid of it though, because I need more 3DO controllers, so this is why you always check bargain bins when you're at Goodwill, because you never know what you're going to find. And it seems to work well enough for playing balls, so it certainly fits that motif of designed for fighting games, although in this particular one of the top row buttons only serves to pause or quit to the main menu. It doesn't actually have a fighting purpose in this game, but it's there. Now it's time to test the GameCube Super Pad, as it's called. You know, the rubber bands they wrapped around these cords tended to leave a little residue. The 3DO one was worse than the others, but I imagine that's because it had been at the bottom of the bin for so long that nobody had ever touched it, and it just ate away at the rubber's natural qualities over time, and it just degenerated into a pile of goo. The GameCube controller cord was not so bad, and this Super Pad seems to work just fine as a standard GameCube controller. I'm trying it with Dave Mirra BMX, and I'm not having any problems that I can see using any of the buttons to control the moves. The only problems would be that I'm probably not that good at Dave Mirra, but I did just manage to perform a trick in the free ride mode, so perhaps I can actually do pretty well with this particular controller. Maybe there's less latency as compared to doing it with a Wavebird, so might actually be my preferred way to play it now. And we have the Mad Catz 3-button Genesis controller. Would have been nicer if it was a 6-button, but because it has all those turbo switches and it was only $3, again, seemed worth it for the proposition if it was a working controller, and it is working for me right now as I use it on the Analog Mega SG, because it has the same 9-pin out port in the front that regular Sega Genesis Model 1, 2, and 3 do, so it's compatible. And it's fun to play Ultra Core on the Mega SG because it's built in. You don't have to wait to load anything. It's ready to go the moment you turn on the system. And it is a very good unreleased game that, by all appearances, was finished and never published. It's got some classic chiptune sounds that remind me of old Commodore 64 music, which means it was probably also a Commodore Amiga game and then got ported to Genesis. But as long as we're here testing the controller, let's go back and play an old school classic, Altered Beast. Wise from your grave. Yes, you know this game well, either famously or infamously, whichever way you consider it. It is still a fun game to play. It's kind of slow-paced, but I think that actually makes it, in some ways, preferable to a game like Ghosts and Goblins, where things are constantly getting thrown at you. In Altered Beast, you have time to act and react to everything that gets thrown your way, and you power up your way to this boss fight at the end of the first stage by collecting the floating orbs that come out of enemies when you defeat them, and then once you're super powered up in your wolfen form, you can easily take out the boss at the end of the stage. Or not so easily, because I burned through a couple of lives. I'm out of practice at this, but at least I got the round clear bonus. And then of course, when he decapitates into his floating head form, he immediately steals all of your power-ups, and you gotta follow him down beneath the earth to the next area. At this point, I just created a save state and decided it was time to move on to our final thing to test, which was the Game Boy game Race Drive-In, which was only $2.99, and it goes for $12.99 according to price charting. Didn't compare it to eBay, but I'm guessing that's probably the most recent sales of it, averaged out, so saved $10 on this one and didn't have it in my Game Boy collection. Although this is also a very notorious game because it tried to do 3D animated driving, and the frame rate was pretty bad on home console versions, and the Game Boy is woefully underpowered compared to some of those. So what you think of this game, maybe it was only worth $2.99, but it sells for more than that if you buy it from somebody that's a reseller. So for me, it's still a bargain and worth having. So in conclusion, for Goodwill hunting this week, I got quite a few good deals. I saved as much as $25 on the PS3 controller, $10 on the Game Boy game, and I spent $35 total, so the savings I got on those two alone covered all of the rest. The GameCube controller, the 3DO controller, which I can't even find a price for, and the Genesis controller. So I got 4 controllers and 3 games, 2 PS3 games and a Game Boy game, all for 35 bucks, and the value was way more than what I spent. Although 35 bucks is not the cheapest you could do by any means. I mean, you could go to a garage sale or a thrift of some kind that's not Goodwill and get a better score than that, but I'm pretty happy with what I got here. I'm Mr. Mega Man Fan. This is the Retro Hunting Adventures, and thank you for watching.